So I've been laid off around 5 to 6 times in my life by now, and it is a pretty normal experience for any of us that work in the art, animation, entertainment, or any creative project-driven industry. But I know for a lot of people who get unexpectedly laid off, that is a totally different experience. So just to be fair, from my experience, every time I got laid off, for the most part, I knew about it a long time ago, right when I signed the contract for the job, because that's what it's like when you're working in any nomadic project-driven industry, especially in animation. But the thing is, it's like, why don't many people talk about this then if it's such a normal thing? I have never seen a video, YouTube video, or really any handy resource about another artist in animation or art talking about the process of being laid off and that in-between time period of jumping from project to project. Usually whenever you hear about most people working in animation's experience, it's like, oh, I worked at Disney, then I worked at Sony, then I worked at Netflix, then I worked at this studio, and that's great, but I don't really hear many people talking about what goes on in between when you don't have a job, because I understand it can kind of be a somewhat shameful experience, and some people don't like talking about the fact that they got laid off, they're on hiatus, or they're taking a break, because even though it's something that they knew was a part of the game, a lot of people associate the idea of getting fired, laid off, as a bad thing and something full of shame, because we're in a society that really glorifies stability, financial stability, and looking like you have your shit together, and if you're unemployed, it looks like you don't. So I think that's something that needs to be a little bit reworked, and that's why I'm making this video talking about what it's like getting laid off as an artist, because honestly, I've been having a pretty good time, but I know it's not like that for everyone, and I know that it comes from a very privileged place for me to say that, but I'm hoping that by making videos like this and informing you more about the experience, you have more information about what to do, you think about the options you can take, and hopefully that will decrease the level of anxiety and stress that comes along with it, because I was there too. Like, I've been in that place where I really was in a bad and low point in life because I did not have a job, I did not have any financial means, I did not have any way to support myself. But through my past 5 years of experience now, and through those 5 to 6 different layoffs, I have now gotten to this place where I really don't feel as bad about being unemployed. So before we dive into the video, I first want to thank the sponsor of today's video, Flexispot. So as you can see behind me here, this is the Comhar Pro standing desk, because when you are no longer working in an office, you lose all of your office supply privileges, like having a stand desk or having a desktop. So it's going to eventually be on you to supply these things for yourself when you're working from home and doing your projects. In addition to that, it's also very helpful to have an ergonomical chair, because when you're working from home again, you have to kind of just be responsible for your own health and well-being, because after studios lay you off, they don't care about what happens to you, really. So it's really up to you to decide what is the best office furniture that suits your needs, so that when you're working from home, you can still be productive and doing the things that you want to do. I'll talk more about Flexispot later, but first I wanted to talk about what happens when you get laid off. So when you first get laid off, there are a few things that kind of happen in the process. Usually when you sign a project with an animation studio or any sort of project-driven industry job, they normally tell you when you're gonna get laid off eventually in a very broad spectrum of time frames. And they might say something like, oh, this project is gonna last about 1 to 1.5 years. So you kind of just approximate what is 1 to 1.5 years from now. And you generally know that's the timeline of when you're gonna get laid off. But 2 to 3 months before your actual layoff date is when they'll actually confirm with you, oh, this is the exact date you're gonna get laid off, so prepare for that day. And usually between that time frame, the studio will try their best to help you land on your next job, but that's not always guaranteed. They're gonna try. You will have your connections, and I would say use this time to the best of your ability to try to land on your next job between the 2 to 3 month time frame. But of course, everyone can still try their best and not land on a job, which is why you should still prepare for the worst case scenario. So then by the time you're going to get laid off, usually a lot of people in the industry refer to this more as you're rolling off or you're wrapping up on a project, which actually is probably what it should be, because I feel like laid off sounds like you got laid off without any consent between you and the studio, when really you already went into the job knowing that this was going to happen, and it always happens all the time. But what happens after you actually get laid off is you are supposed to be promised a severance package of some sort, dismissal pay, and also your vacation payout. A lot of this is really going to depend on what studio you work at, but for the most part, if you are in an animation union studio, for the most part, you will at least get your dismissal pay and your vacation payout. However, not all studios that I'm aware of offer some sort of severance package. And another thing that should happen is reverse recruiting. Not all studios do this, but I thought it was nice that my previous studio at least offered to reverse recruit, which means instead of them trying to recruit you, they're now promoting you to other recruiters at different studios. But again, not everything is promised. But it is also important in this stage of the process to read the fine lines of your contracts. For example, I did not get my vacation payout until like 2 to 3 months after I got laid off, and that was something that was supposed to be granted to me within my layoff week. If I was a person that really needed that money, that would be very bad on the studio. However, I found out that there is a world out there where you can file a claim against the studio and also get a lot more money back than just your vacation pay if your claim is the one that wins the case. However, after reading through the fine lines of the studio contract, a lot of studios might also do this where they say that you will not impose any harm on the studio or file any claims against them after you sign this contract and get laid off. And unfortunately, I did not read the fine lines or really understand what that meant when I signed my layoff contract. So not that I was going to, but I could not file a claim against my studio and get that extra cha-ching if I wanted to. But I'm just saying, if you did work at a studio and you notice that they don't have that clause and they are taking advantage of you and holding on to your vacation payout or any sort of promised pay, make sure that you know that that is an option out there for you. So what happens after you get unemployed, especially if you live in Southern California, is you should be able to file for unemployment with the EDD. So if you need familiarity with their logo, this is what it looks like. But basically with the EDD, this is how you can get some sort of financial support between the times that you don't have a job. And the only thing I will say though is that if you are making income on the side, like if you're doing side projects or making money through sponsorships, comics, personal projects of some sort, if you ever surpass like close to $1,000 per week, you are most likely not going to be paid for that week. But what they do is they're going to send you a piece of paper that kind of looks something like this. So this type of paper is where you kind of fill out, little survey of what you did that week. Like, did you look for work? Were you too sick to work? I don't know. But you basically fill out this form so that they can see if you're qualified to get unemployment pay for that week or those 2 weeks. They kind of do it bi-weekly. But also, you don't have to do this on paper, by the way. In the beginning, I made this mistake of like filling it out on paper every other 2 weeks, and I made my boyfriend go out and like mail it for me, even though that was not necessary. You can do everything online, and this is just for, I guess, people who don't want to do it online. So I did this at first, but know that you can do this online. And after you fill in that sheet and you tell them how much money you made or did not make per 2 weeks, they will then determine if you are qualified to receive some sort of financial pay for that week. And I will say, as a person that does juggle a lot of multiple projects in which I do surpass that $1,000 per week pay thing, I don't always get paid unemployment. It's just more so for the weeks that I don't receive any pay. Hey, here's just a bit of a financial cushion for you, for your bills and stuff. Then if you are qualified for pay, you get this little check in the mail in which, yes, I am covering to protect my information. You get this check in the mail and they will pay you in accordance to how much you were making prior to, the fact that you got unemployed, and you will then be able to just deposit this in your bank account, and then you got some extra money. So these are just some of the things that honestly annoyed me when I first started school, and nobody taught me the way about how to navigate the animation industry. But that's why I feel like it's really important for me to start this course, so that I can also not just teach people how to storyboard, but also navigate the industry as a career. So I've been in the middle of planning the storyboard career course, which is a course I'm thinking about making, and a lot of you from my previous video have really been a fan of the idea, so I'm actually actively starting to plan it now. And again, the importance of this course that I'm trying to think about is just how there's so many things in school that they don't teach you until you get thrown into the industry. But I want to try to make a course that, yeah, we teach you how to storyboard, but on top of that, you also learn how to navigate the ins and outs of working in the industry, kind of the nuances of what people expect from you. Because while I was in school, for the most part, I learned how to take feedback, criticism, and give feedback back to my peers, which is a big part of working in the animation industry. And of course, you learn how to draw and storyboard and the craft itself. And yeah, the craft usually is about like 50% of it, and then 50% of the other stuff is things that they don't really ever teach you. So that's one of the stuff that I really want to teach in my future class, is just talking about how to go about different passes and how to interact with the directors and how to deal with script changes and just how to deal with the do's and the don'ts of the career, because I personally feel like a lot of the classes I've been to have missed out on these tips. So I hope to better provide some insight based on my recent knowledge, because of course a lot of industry veterans who have worked in the industry for the past like many decades may not always have the most up-to-date information with how things are going nowadays. So I feel like it's always important to know what things are kind of like in the more recent years. In addition to teaching more about storyboard courses though, I also wanted to teach you all a little bit more about Flexispot and why I think that they are a great option to have, especially for those of you who are seeking more ergonomical options for your office space. So I chose this Calmheart Pro desk because not only does it offer enough space for all of our computer equipment, but also because there are just a lot of other cool knickknacks about it. Like for example, this desk has a wireless charging option where it just charges your phone without you needing to connect any more wires to it. They do have a USB and a USB-C plug for you to charge anything else that might require wires. The great thing about this desk is you can adjust the height to whatever your preferences are, and even when you lower it, it can detect when it's about to bump into something. And there's also a drawer for all of your supplies. This desk is also made with a bamboo surface, which is antimicrobial and also water resistant. So if you spill anything or a lot of dirt starts accumulating, you won't have to worry about bugs, germs, or any of the gross stuff accumulating on your desk. But that's of course not a reason to not clean it either. And as for their chair, they have an adjustable headrest as well as these adjustable arms and lumbar support. So if you have been looking for a deal on any ergonomical furniture or chairs, desks, check out the links in the below for Flexispot's Labor Day sale, where they're offering a discount off of all of their furniture. Thank you to Flexispot for sponsoring today's video. Also, I just wanted to take the time to actually thank you all for supporting my last two videos, where first I talked about, me quitting animation, and the second one was talking about more so of a day in my life as an unemployed artist. And I at first thought these videos wouldn't do that well because I've done vlogs in the past and they weren't usually my best videos, but so far we've actually been doing pretty good, and it's always a good sign when YouTube is telling you that you're getting more regular viewers engaging with this video and helping it increase its reach. So thank you all so much for actually engaging, watching, and taking part of this journey with me. Obviously if you want to see more videos like this one, keep commenting, liking, subscribing, because it really means a lot to me as a person that's trying their best to go independent. It allows me to know that making videos like these are good for my channel, and it makes making more videos like this possible. Also, I would like to share with you that I finally did fill in those missing spreads for MEESH. Like in my last video, I asked you all, so this is book 1, but I'm working on book 2, which is not yet released. And for the final pages of the book, they were left blank and I needed some help on figuring out what to fill them in with. And a lot of you wanted to do some behind the scenes stuff and to, yes, include some of the thumbnails that I did for the book. So that's what I pretty much did yesterday. I was just pretty much just thinking about how to format a very simplified version of how the book came to be, from just thinking about ideas to then bringing it to a final published book. So thank you all for your suggestions. I think it's really fun that we can have this type of interactive experience where you will see the suggestions that you made for me in a published book. And while this is only book 1, book 2 is planned to come out in around spring of 2024, so look out for it. Anyway, I'm going to be meeting up with somebody for lunch now to just talk about some stuff, which is another nice thing about being laid off, is that nobody is telling you when you can or can't be back from lunch. I know this is kind of like a standard corporate job sort of thing, but it's also just like, again, that's why animation is just pretty much like another corporate job, except I will say it's a little bit more fun compared to what I've heard from other people. But I've really enjoyed just having this time without worrying about getting back to something based on what somebody's telling me to do. Time to call the Uber. So now that I'm back, there were a few more things I wanted to address in this video. So throughout your era of unemployment, there's gonna be a lot of pros and cons about it that you're gonna face. Like, usually a lot of people actually enjoy being in between projects, but usually this is in the scenario that there are more jobs lined up. But some of the cons of being unemployed or just dealing with that hiatus period is, of course, feelings of unworthiness, because I would definitely say usually your insecurities really hit you during these times. I would say you don't know if you're gonna land a job. Not everyone always has another job lined up after their previous one. So when you're kind of in this period of limbo and not knowing what's gonna happen, you just kind of get overwhelmed with negative feelings sometimes, especially if nobody is reaching out to you and you're wondering, like, what if I just thought that this career was gonna work out and you've already done a few years into it and then all of a sudden you're not getting any work anymore. That can be a little bit weird. So on top of that, of course, you don't have stable income during the times that you're unemployed. And this mostly goes for anyone who doesn't have anything going on outside of their work. So for me, I would say I definitely still am making money during the times I am not working at a studio, but it's not like I'm getting it every Friday at this certain rate. Sometimes I'll get like a lump sum of payment every few months or so based on my book, and maybe that amount can cover what I would have been making in animation for the past months I did not get paid for. But it's like you just wait a longer time to receive that lump sum, and then I might have more sparse like payments from Patreon, Etsy, or other things. So at least I'm still getting paid, and with the unemployment stuff, it's like an additional bonus paycheck until I either decide to go full on like self-employed or I work for a studio again. And another thing that's kind of annoying about being unemployed is you're gonna have to figure out your health insurance situation. That's been like the biggest thing I would say that has kind of made me reconsider if I would want to go independent or work at a full-time job, because it's so much easier when you have your health insurance covered by working at a place. But you know, I take the time to think to myself and I'm just like, am I just gonna live my life based on health insurance? Like, am I just gonna have the way I get health insurance dictate how I'm gonna live my life? Like, if there's a way for me to become fully independent and just pay for my own health insurance, I think I would just rather go that route. Of course, I'm just working my way there, and the good thing is that for the most part, when you end your job at a unionized animation studio, you still have like about a year or so of your health insurance being applicable to you or being eligible for it. And then, you know, by like next year or so, I would be eating into my bank of hours, which is not really like fun. However, I at the same time don't think that I should just be living my life based off of whether or not health insurance is going to be just given to me. I think finding what makes you happy in life is more important. I highly recommend that you call your health insurance provider by the time you're ending your job to figure out exactly how much time you have left, because essentially if you don't find another job soon, you will be put on a timer with how much time you have left on your health insurance before you have to start paying Cobra, which is almost like $800 a month, which is ridiculous. All that aside, there are some pros to being unemployed other than the money, because not everything in life is just about money. So being forced to think about the big picture of your life is going to be something that you end up thinking about, especially when you don't have an industry defining it for you. I will say when I was working in an animation studio, my identity was definitely more tied to the animation industry or just being there. Whereas the moment that we started working from home and I was unemployed, that's kind of when I started being more like, oh, I have a life like that's just beyond animation, and animation is just a part of it. And I feel like that's kind of how a lot of people grow with their identities outside of their careers. So I think it is important to have an identity outside of your job for sure. And the next thing is that you do kind of force your way to find ways to support yourself outside of animation, and those ways can potentially grow into something bigger. For example, without this whole hiatus thing being a part of the animation industry, I don't think I would have ever relied on social media. I don't think I would have ever relied on making my own graphic novel. And with those things, I pretty much have learned that I could have a life outside of animation and maybe live a life where I can just phase in and out of studios and not always feel obligated to only work in the animation industry, but there are other alternative paths I can take. And then lastly, of course, there's a lot more flexibility to do the things that you want. Like, this is the time for you to go travel and do things. And yeah, sure, it costs money, but also know that for the most part, when you get laid off, again, you get your vacation payout. You would have been spending that time going somewhere anyway, otherwise they would have expired. And there are some nice things about jumping from job to job that maybe people don't talk about as much, is that you actually somewhat make more money every time you hop from project to project, because you're always, for the most part, going to get a raise as long as you negotiate that by the time you have your next job. But the fact that you even have the opportunity to negotiate for a new rate automatically can put you up for a potential promotion. And on top of that, you do have to start accruing vacation days all over again by the time you land a new job at a different studio. If you're staying at the same studio, you don't have to do that. But if you're jumping from studio to studio, you will have to accrue your vacation days like all over again. But hey, you also did receive your vacation payout from the studio, so that money is for you to use however you want. And in a way, it's kind of like you get a bonus after every time you finish a job at a studio, because that vacation payout is up for you to decide how to use, instead of just a studio holding onto it for you and just using it as for whenever you feel like taking a day off. Also, despite job hunting or being in between jobs or hopping to a new studio can be a scary thing, because there's a lot of job changes and life transitions happening during these times. One of the good things is that you're always kind of forced to go out of your comfort zone. You're always forced to build new connections, and with that comes a lot of growth. I don't think I would have developed this much courage or this much ability to take risks if it weren't for my experience in the animation industry, which is again why I don't really hate it. I don't have anything really against the industry, but I also do understand at the end of the day, the industry is not this god or entity that's going to be taking care of you no matter what. I mean, this goes for anything in life. There's no non-living thing that's just gonna exist there and just try to make sure you're good in all aspects of your life. So that's why at the end of the day, you only have you to rely on, and being in a position like this really forces you to practice and exercise that no matter what happens. And you know, I will say that during these times of hiatuses, I have forced myself to go out and deepen my connections with other people, friends, or even work colleagues. And during this time, it also forces me to just connect with people outside of animation. I've been working with people in the graphic novel space, publishing space, social media space. I have social media managers that help me manage my sponsorships on YouTube, which opens me up to a new realm of connections as well, in which I work with other brands there who are familiar with my work. And then I also work with people that are in the clothing industry or Patreon or any like online type of business. I feel like I've been gaining more connections in those areas. So I'm not just limited to animation only. And as I am getting older, even though I'm just 27, I'm just starting to realize that not everything in life is just about the career that you decided to do when you were in high school and college. Like, if I were to just erase that time period where I had to just apply to Cal Arts and stuff, it's just like the me before then probably wouldn't have given a shit if I just did like storyboarding as a job. Like, I didn't even decide I wanted to do storyboarding until I was maybe a second or third year in Cal Arts, which is like a little bit less than 10 years ago. So I don't think we should be putting so much pressure on ourselves to just decide to be this one thing only for the rest of our lives. Like, you're gonna job change. I know so many people who entered Cal Arts and are now doing something totally different, and that's fine. And you can still be a part of the animation industry without feeling like it's the only thing you have to do. And while people like to shame generalists and shame people for doing multiple things and being a jack of all trades, I do think that being a generalist in this day and age is more beneficial for you as an individual. But if you want to be a person that's solely focused on one industry, sure, you will be able to land those opportunities in the industry, but with those consequences of during times like writer strikes, actor strikes, there are going to be things that you will have to go through and bear. And as long as you're okay with that, then you're good. It just depends on you making the decisions that make you happy at the end of the day. And that's why I feel like, people should just be allowed to make their own decisions and live life however they want to, as long as it's satisfying your needs and your wants. Who is to judge or complain about how you're living your life? Anyway, I hope that this video helped give you more insight about what it's been like for me getting laid off as an artist, especially living in Los Angeles, where there's a high standard of living. In my previous video, a lot of you were interested in knowing how to own a home, because I currently own a townhouse with my boyfriend, and it's been pretty much a great decision that we made before interest rates got crazy. So if you would like to learn more about, the technicalities of affordable living in Los Angeles, especially when you're unemployed, I would love to share that more with you. But please leave a comment down below, like and subscribe if that's something that you want to see from me. Really, how well these videos do is dictated by your engagement, and if these videos perform well, it allows me to continue doing this, especially now that I'm trying to become more fully independent. So it would help a lot if you could let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you're interested in any email consultations on Patreon, where I give you extreme personalized feedback on the trajectory of your career, your art portfolio, or just social media, I can also do that, also linked down below. And thank you again to Flexispot for sponsoring today's video. Highly recommend you all to check out the Comar Pro standing desk, as well as the C5 standard office chair, because if you're gonna go independent, you really do gotta set up your space to work for you. And that's why I am more than happy again to offer a Labor Day sale deal down in the links below. So check it out if you are interested in getting a stand desk or office chair. I'm here to provide resources and give you my experience, and all I can do is hope that it helps. Anyway, thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you all in the next one.